right, saddle up, pour yourself something strong and get comfortable. We're about to ride headfirst into a modern-day spaghetti western, a story all about housing regulation, strategic silence, and a ghost that haunts the line between a vehicle and a home.
And in this town, well, the silence is just about the loudest thing you'll hear. We're talking about a place where the rules get real blurry, and, asking the right questions can feel a lot like drawing your weapon right in the middle of Main Street.
Yeah, the air is just thick with unspoken agreements and these tumbleweeds of regulatory ambiguity. It's the kind of landscape where things aren't always what they seem, and the story of how something got here is way less important than the fact that it's here now.
And that, right there, is the heart of our tale. The whole conflict boils down to this one thing that decided it could be both a home and a vehicle, all depending on who's asking and when they're asking. This is where our mystery really begins.
Okay, so let's get into it. Every good Western starts with some mysterious stranger riding into town. Well, in our story, that stranger arrived on wheels, and it created a problem that the town decided to solve with, you guessed it, silence.
So just picture this for a second. A structure comes rolling down the highway. To anyone, say, from the Department of Transportation, it's a vehicle, no question. It's got all the jewelry to prove it. Axles groaning, lights flashing, safety chains jingling. It was built to travel.
But then, this is the crucial moment. It parks. It stops moving. And in that one instant, its entire history as a vehicle is just conveniently forgotten. Poof. The tracks are swept away. It's no longer a thing that traveled. It's now a thing that simply is.
So how do you make a wagon's past just vanish into thin air? Well, you give it a brand new name and a whole lot of charm. And that's when we meet the small residential unit.
Now, what's so fascinating is how this all plays out. The small residential unit isn't some dry technical turn. It's a character. She's the dazzling newcomer who leans against the bar like she owns the deed, promising everyone exactly what they want to hear. Flexibility without responsibility, progress without paperwork, and certainty without anyone bothering to ask who's really in charge.
And this, right here, this is the whole strategy in a nutshell. It's a rebrand, plain and simple. See, a tiny house on wheels admits what it is. It's a wagon. But a small residential unit? Ooh, that sounds permanent. It sounds official. It sounds like it was born right here in town. It's the exact same horse, just wearing a much fancier and way more distracting saddle.
You know what happens when nobody knows who the sheriff is, right? You get chaos. And that's exactly what this little rebranding trick creates. A total regulatory free-for-all. A classic knockdown, drag-out saloon fight over who's in charge. So, what's the game plan here? It's what we're calling the silent strategy. The group that wrote this new standard, they're acting like the saloon's piano player. They just keep on playing that tune, and they intentionally, carefully avoid answering the really big federal questions. Why? Because saying nothing is a whole lot faster and safer than picking a side.
So the first question in this brawl is the most obvious one. Hey, if this thing rolled down the highway on a chassis, isn't it a vehicle? Doesn't the Department of Transportation or maybe the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration have something to say about that? Seems pretty straightforward, right?
And here's the answer you get from our piano player. A total non-answer. By saying, oh, we don't interpret federal law, the standards body just sidesteps the entire issue, leaving builders and local officials completely in the dark. Meanwhile, the piano just keeps on playing.
Okay, on to the next question. If it's a home built in a factory, doesn't the federal law for manufactured housing, the one regulated by HUD, apply? This is a huge legal deal called preemption, where federal law basically overrides whatever the state or local guys say.
And once again, you get the dodge. By calling the standard voluntary guidance, they create another perfect escape hatch. Hey, it's not a mandatory rule, they argue, so we don't have to deal with federal law. This silent strategy creates a giant void right where clear authority ought to be.
So, what happens when you build an entire system on a foundation of silence? Well, this regulatory void, it doesn't just create confusion. It creates something else entirely. Something that lingers. It creates a ghost.
I mean, really think about it. What is the ultimate consequence? When you build a whole framework based on what you don't say, what kind of thing are you actually creating in the real world?
You create the ghost trailer. And honestly, it's the perfect name for it. Because it exists in the shadows, right between jurisdictions, it's not quite a vehicle and it's not quite a house, it slips right through the cracks because no single authority is willing or able to claim it.
And this wanted poster, well, it lays out exactly how dangerous this is. Without a VIN, a vehicle identification number, it's completely untraceable. No title means ownership is a murky mess. No registration means it's not even legally on the road. It is, for all intents and purposes, unaccounted for, a lawless ghost riding the gaps in the system.
So, of course, it all has to come down to a final showdown. And like any good Western, we've got our heroes, we've got our villains, and then we've got the messy, ugly reality of the whole situation. Let's break it down.
So let's lay out this final reckoning. The good? That's the existing federal law. The rules are actually already on the books. The sheriff is real, he just hasn't been invited into the saloon yet. The bad? Well, that's this new standard, the one built on silence and voluntary guidance. And the ugly? That's the result. It's a wagon with busted axles pretending it's a permanent fixture, a ghost trailer haunting the entire regulatory landscape.
So here's the final thought to leave you with. This delicate balance of not asking and not telling, it can't last forever. Sooner or later, someone is going to step out into that dusty street and finally ask the hard questions this town was never supposed to ask. Because in a town built on silence, a reckoning is always just over the horizon. And out here, we ride at dawn.